Welcome everyone. This is the first of Pearlstone Center's online offering, and we're going to try like each week for the next couple weeks to be offering a lot of online Jewish nature connection, and this is the first of those sessions. I'll be for the next week. For the next couple weeks, I'll be offering different classes on the Torah of earth, the Torah of fire, the Torah of water, Torah of air, and the Torah of trees. So there'll be 5 different sessions. This one is not. This one is just a nature connection and transforming fear into courage and whatever else we meander onto. So the more you participate, the better, because put questions in the chat. I'll try to get to them, even if I don't answer them directly. How does that sound? Good? Okay. So not everyone, I'm going to try to assume that a lot of the definitions that could be in a Torah class are not going to be familiar to everyone, and some they're going to be, for some of us, they're going to be very familiar. So I will try to give definitions to each one of the things that I say, and I'll try to give the English, and I know that I'll fail. So I pre-apologize when I can't get every definition. And if I do, just write it in there and say, what's that? And I will address it immediately, because I'm definitely trying. The second thing is, any question is good. So just put it in there and we'll go through it. What I want to start off with is the definition of Torah. So Torah is, in its broadest definition, just the word means guidance, and in the way it's used is guidance in the sense of someone who's a morah, who's a guide, like a guide on a track. Like if you're going on a walk, most of whenever a relationship with the Creator is described within the Torah, it's always described in the way of a walk, of going for a walk. So it says that Adam and Eve were walking with the Creator in the garden, and it says that, and that was the primary relationship with the beings to the source of its, from a being to the source, to its source, is understood as going for a walk with the Creator in a walk. It says in the Torah that Noah walked with God and Abraham walked with God, and each one of the instructions, which sometimes can be described in Torah literature as a law or whatever, but the actual use, the actual word that's being used is like all the metaphors are always walk metaphors. So the path of Torah is called the derech, which is the walk, and the Creator in the Torah says that you should follow in my ways. My ways, i.e. the way of walking, follow in my footsteps. So when the word Torah is being used, it's like a mora, and and Torah. The Torah is like guidance on how to walk, how to move. One of the interesting ways that the Torah in Hebrew describes a particular creation is the way in which it moves. So if it swims, it's a fish, it's a dog. So whether it's a dolphin or a mollusk or a fish, if it swims, it's called a swimmer. And the way you move through life is the way that you get described, not like the description of your internal organs. So in biology, one might describe those being by its organs, but like in Hebrew and in Torah, a bat, which is flying, is called a bird because it flies. Now one might say, no, it's a mouse, but it's a flying creature. So because this is the way it moves through life, this is the definition that it gets. And that is an important definition, to define something not by its organs, but by the way in which it moves through the world. And so Torah is giving guidance on the way to walk. And this walking is like uh, um, is going to be what the way you walk in this world is what will define you, not the way, not what you, not your body necessarily. So that's one of the definitions of Torah, the way to walk. Right? That's in the most narrow definition of Torah. And since this is the first session that we're starting, I wanted to give a definition of Torah. So the most narrow definition is the 5 books of Moses. So when we say the 5 books of Moses, which is is collected into the scroll that sits inside of a Jewish ark in the front of or anywhere, that scroll is often called Torah. But in a broader definition, the entire Tanakh, which is the Bible, which is the collection of Jewish scrolls, like a library, Bible means library, that is also defined as Torah. In an even broader definition, Torah is the act of learning those books and any commentary that comes out of it. An even broader definition of that is all of the ideas and all of the insights and every single flow of information that comes from any of the works and from any of the commentaries and from any personal intuition and guidance that someone gets, that's all defined as Torah. So when we're using that word Torah, or earth-based Torah, or this kind of definition, a lot of times I'll be switching, and many people switch from a very narrow definition of a particular text to the broadest definition. And that actually is not even the broadest definition. The broadest definition is the wisdom with which the world was created, searching the wisdom with which the world is created for guidance. So looking into the world, looking into the voice of what this world is and finding guidance from it. And that is also called Torah. And you have many examples of how Torah is, its broadest definition is actually the most clear definition. So for instance, Rabbi Akiva didn't learn Torah until he was sitting by the river. And it says that he was illiterate at the time, and he didn't know how to read. And he saw the water pouring over a rock. And he said, if this water, which is so soft and supple, can carve a rock out over time, then my hard mind, even if it doesn't receive the wisdom and water is always connected in Torah, Chachma, wisdom, and water is always water is wisdom, meaning that it gives life to everything. It starts from a very high place and flows down to a very low place. And wisdom is like that. It has abstractions on the highest level, but if it's true wisdom, it flows all the way down to the lowest and most particular definitions to give guidance to like an actual, what we'd say in Hebrew, like tachlis, the actual details of life. So it's not just like an abstract conversation, but it gives that meaning to the most particular things. So when he saw that this water, which was so supple, could carve out a rock, he said, even my hard mind can be carved out from supple wisdom if I let it roll over the rock over and over and over again. So, and there's many other examples like Avram Avinu, the patriarch, this example of how he came to realize the Creator is he looked at each aspect of nature and he saw duality in each one of them. So he saw that the moon looked like the queen of the world, but then it went away, and then the sun looked like the king of the world, but then it went away. Then each thing in the world that might have be looking like the source and power in this world always had a flaw, and something else made up for it. And when he saw how each had its time and each had its way, but there's nothing in this world that is the ultimate power, he realized that there's something, there's this, whatever the source of this is, which is a negative description, meaning that we can't describe that source in any way, but we can just know what's coming out of that source, meaning this world is a communication from that source, but we don't know anything about that source. He said that source must be the thing that I should bow to, the thing that I can lend myself. Okay, so we were talking about the Torah, and I think we were on the broadest definition. And when one is looking at the broadest definition of Torah, meaning to get guidance from the source of this life, one of the interesting ways in which the Jewish tradition and the Torah has a singular sort of way of looking is it sees all of creation as a linguistic communication, right? So the earliest story in the Torah is it has the Creator speaking the world into being. And that's so important once you start off. If you look at the Torah as a series of stories, which they get more and more and more and more meta. So the final thing of, like, you know, a description of Jewish history. But then as you go back further and further and further into the Torah until you get to the final meta story of all of creation, you have that first story. The Creator is speaking the world into being, and it's not the way you have to describe it. It's a choice to, the Torah is choosing to describe this entirety of the world as language, as a communication. And that sort of the way that implies that the world has meaning to it, and that is also not a small thing. So you're already starting with an assumption that this world is discernible and it has meaning, and that there's a meaning to it. And even though we don't know the source of this world, in other words, we can never experience it, we can experience what it's saying, what it's communicating, just by the fact that something is happening. Just by the fact that something is happening. It doesn't mean that we're right about the way we take it. It doesn't mean that we know what, like, what we think we heard, we can always say we're so right about it. But the idea that we can look towards what is happening and hear and find meaning in it and find communication from it is the source of the idea of Torah, of looking into life in its most exact description. It's looking into the natural world, because that is like the voice of what the Creator said. Let there be light, let there be a sea and a sky and earth and vegetation and stars and the moon and the birds and the fish and the people and the animals. That is the most clear communication of what the world is. And even everything that is happening in this world, to listen to it and to hear what it's saying. So the Baal Shem Tov says that let there be light, meaning how do we know that the Creator said let there be light? One thing you could say that it says in the Torah, but the fact that there's light, like right now I'm looking at this light, the light is shining, it's the source of this life saying light, light, light. Let there be light, let there be light, let there be light. And everything that is happening is being spoken into being, and I can learn from that. So one of the practices of the Jewish people for thousands of years was what can be called in different generations different things, but it is called hitbodedut, and it means to be secluded in nature, to be alone in nature, and to sit in the natural world and to hear and to encounter the divine through the creation, to encounter the Creator through creation. And what that means is to find Torah in that encounter, in the encounter with nature, to find and to seek and to receive guidance for how to walk this life, and then to do it, to do good. So there's three stages primarily in Jewish mysticism of almost most things, and that is Hachna'ah, Havdalah, and Hamtaka. Hachna'ah is sort of admittance or submission, like this is happening, to just admit this is, to be comfortable and to understand that this is happening, this is what life is. And the second one is Havdalah, is to make separations. And the third one is Hachna'ah, which is sweetening. So in its just the simplest way that it's described is to silence, to be quiet, and to realize this is exactly what is happening. The second one is what is the work that has to be done? In other words, what are the separations that have to be made? What needs to be put into the right place? What needs to go into the right place to make things happen? And the third stage is what will make this the sweetest possible? What perspective will bring me to the point that this is the sweetest thing that could possibly happen? So whenever we're encountering something that is happening in our life, the first is just to not run away from it, but to say, this is definitely, this is happening. This is what life is right now. This is happening. The second one is what needs to be put into what place? What work needs to happen? What tikkun, what fixing needs to happen in this situation? And the third thing is not how is the fix the very best, but how is this whole process of the fact that a work had to happen, that there was something that was encountered that had to be overcome. How is that the very best? It's good that it came. And that's the third aspect, which is sweetening. So in Hitbodedut, that's just a description of these three stages in Kabbalah. But in Hitbodedut, you do that too. So I'm just going to describe very quickly. It's unstructured, it's visionary, it doesn't have a lot of rules to it. It just, Rabbi Nachman describes Hitbodedut as he recommends going out for an hour a day, sitting in or standing in a spot inside of the fields or inside of the forest, and connecting to the Creator. And that can happen with silence, and it can happen with speech, or it can happen with just looking. And for me, I'll just say that the reason why I'm even talking about this or sharing about it is that in my life, no matter where I was, in hard times that I brought upon myself, hard times that just came out of nowhere, good times, boring times, days that went by without much interest, just run-of-the-mill days. And in each one of these days, this practice of Hitbodedut was there for me, and that's why I'm sharing it. That's why I'm sharing it, because I know that in times of need, it's there, and in times where you need to generate your own growth, and it's not coming from the outside, it's there, and that's why I'm sharing it. So Hitbodedut, on its most basic thing, is going out into nature and sitting there, and we can describe what happens. And if people want to put into the chat questions about that, that's good. But the first thing is it's like in these same three stages is you bring your yearning, right? The anxiety and your yearnings and the needs that you have, and you bring it to the situation. And then through the process of sitting with the source of being through an encounter with nature, you seek and receive wisdom and guidance for your life. And then the last stage, the third stage, is you go and do it. You go and do good in this world based on that guidance that you receive personally, not from necessarily advice from other people, which is good too. But what we're talking about is Hitbodedut. So when you go, the first stage is, so Scott is asking about the root. Hitboded means to be alone. So it means isolation or seclusion, but it means within nature, right? Primarily, to be there by yourself. So you're not asking other people advice, but you're going into an encounter. And it doesn't have to be in a forest or by a beach or by a river. It could even be on your backyard. It could be while you're sitting at a window looking out, whatever it is. Of course, obviously, those other encounters are, like at the top of a mountain is obviously stronger, makes a stronger impression. But you can draw that. You can draw that out within yourself, even just sitting with a tree by your house or sitting on your backyard. And a lot of times, sometimes that's even better. Because a place that you're familiar with, that you can sit and you can contemplate, and not have to go out for a whole hour just to get there. Sometimes that is even better. So the first thing that happens is that while you sit there, you realize how little of a presence or a noticing that you had until you sat there for a while. And at least I noticed that how flat my experience is when I'm just running around going from thing to thing, and how now when I'm sitting here and trying to connect with the source of being, how all of a sudden I start to notice a whole lot more. And all of a sudden, all these birds that I didn't hear the entire time, all of a sudden I'm hearing them. Then all of a sudden I'm hearing the creaking of the trees and the movement of all of these creatures that I didn't even notice. And I thought like the forest floor was, like a carpet. Now I see all this activity. And then I see activity in each one of the beings. And all of a sudden I see that I'm surrounded by a massive community of life. And that I didn't even notice. That is already I'm entering into the community of the brothers of all of these beings. And in this community, it's a relationship with the creator. So now it's not just me, but it's the voice of the trees, and it's the lives of all of the beings around me that are now part of this experience that I'm having, not just like whatever ideas rolling through my head at the moment. So that's just the first thing that happens. And I'm not saying this has to happen to everyone, but speaking to people and knowing, and everyone, many people might be doing it on their own here or whatever. The next, but it comes out, it seems to be in conversations with other people, that this is everyone's different, but it's a human experience, and we experience these things. So another thing that comes up, and once you're there, is a lot of grief. And because when you're facing the source of your being, you have feelings of grief of why is life like this, right? The first smallest level of why is life outward life? Like for instance, obviously the recording of this live talk at this exact moment when we're together, all of us souls here, at this exact moment, there's a lot of suffering and pain and people that have to go through. And I have experienced some of that myself already. Just why is this? The second, maybe even more painful part of relating to the source of your being is the realization of things within you, right? So it's like, why is life like that? Well, why is life like this? If you're going to turn to the source of being and say, if there's a discernible meaning to this life, why is it like this? The second thing is, why am I like the way I am? The aspects of myself that, despite despite wishing to be a different and a better version of myself, I inevitably am this. That hurts, and it seems to be something that can't be changed. And so there's grief there towards your creator. That why am I who I am? Why couldn't I have been what I would rather be? And that kind of grief comes up. And in Hitzbodedut, the masters of Spodadut, the ones that are talking about it and giving advice, like Rabbi Nachman, say to say it. It doesn't mean that you have a fight with the source of your being, and it doesn't mean you know everything. But just to say, I don't like the way life. Why is this happening? I don't like the way that you set it up. Why does life have to include this? It's so painful. Why do these things have to be within me? And why are these things happening in the outside world? And why did this happen to this person? There's a separation between me and my creator because of this experience. Why create this separation? Why make it hurt like this? It doesn't mean that ultimately we can't find a deeper meaning to it, but at least to be able to express it, at least to be able to say it, that this is the way I feel, and this is where I'm sitting, is good. The next thing is through the contemplation of nature, which nature itself, while you look at the different aspects of nature, you see the painful parts of creation, and you see the joyous and full of life parts of creation. And being able to contemplate those things, contemplating the way in which the ocean carves away the beach and is eating it up and destroying it, and the way in which the one thing that looks like discerning or disconcerting, and then when you look at it deeper, you see its beauty and its depth. The way just the moment that you spend with creation will give you that teaching. It doesn't need to be talked to by another person, and you don't need to hear it from someone. You can just experience it yourself, and that is the deepest experience that you can have. Like it says that in the days to come, which in the redemptive state, you won't have to turn to another person and say, "Teach me about the Creator," because the wisdom of the Creator will be filling the world. You'll be able to just learn Torah from life itself. So in this way, Bodhidut is like that. So it's like the broadest definition and also the most precise definition of Torah, which is to gain guidance from contemplation in nature, and not just in nature, but in the things that happen in this world. So after getting over whatever sort of separation we have with the way things are happening, and also with the nature of creation itself, the next stage is to say, okay, so what am I going to do? Like, now that it is what it is, and now I encounter what needs to be put where to bring a fix to it and to help. And the last stage is to leave that place and to do good. So in Torah, and I want to try to also keep to the time that I said. So in Torah, we have the concept of an angel, and an angel is called a malach. A malach is a messenger. It's one that is bringing a message. And this is particular to the idea of creation being linguistic expression. So if everything that is happening is a message, right, is something that could be heard and understood and discerned, and we can learn from it. Like you get sick if you don't wash your hands, right? So it's a message that I should wash my hands, right? And so the message is brought to you by a messenger. So the part of creation that is bringing that message is called the messenger of that message. And that is the angel, which is Malach, the messenger for that message. And so each part of creation, when you look at it, you can hear that message and you can see the messenger of that message, right? And so when we, oftentimes in the ancient descriptions, you will hear the angel of this plague, which is the messenger of that plague, or the angel of that is telling the leaf to grow. For every leaf, there's an angel, there's a messenger that is bringing the message to the leaf to grow. And the fact that it's being described as a message is going back to the same concept, that it is a linguistic expression. like right, listening to this. Rachel says, listen to the still small voice, right? So, in other words, I have the garment of what is happening in this world, and the message is dressed up in that. So I look at an aspect of the natural world, and then I understand its teaching. I understand what the wisdom that is coming from it. So, in the most just the simplest way, like I'm going to describe my experience. So, since right now I'm in this moment where there's a sickness that is going through people, right? And the clearest message on a deepest way is that it has to be addressed, right? And the Gemara talks about two ways in which it's addressed, but it's not just the Gemara, which is the Talmud, and I'll give an explanation of that Hebrew word, Aramaic, the Hebrew word. So, but it's just on a human level. There's two ways that we're being asked to. It's either to leave or to go inside, right? So when someone hears that now is the time to go inside, and you can hear the message that it's time to go inside, what does that mean in like a deep sense? That it's time to rest, right? It's time for Shabbat. Shabbat means rest. It's time for rest. It's not time to start a project. It's not time to buy or sell. It's not time to change something. It's time to go inside and to rest. Also an option is it's time to leave. To leave means to move away from something, it means to transform or to change. That's possible too. But for most of us, and early on in this experience, a lot of it was moving, like my mother had to move from one place to another. But in general, for a message right now is to go inside and to rest. And that is to be contemplative and to rest and to go inward to try to find the courage that it takes to encounter whatever the situation is being said, whatever the moment is calling. The message of the moment is to go inside to bring out the courage to be able to encounter this experience. So the interesting part of the Gemara talks about, and we should give an explanation of the Gemara. So like we said, a very particular definition of Torah is the 5 books of Moses. The broadest one is the wisdom with which the world is created, getting guidance from that. The Talmud is the conversations that are circulating around the oral law, and oral law meaning the verbal tradition that is passed down from generation to generation. The Talmud is the conversations that is circling around that. That too is also passed down from generation to generation and written down in a massive volume of works, which is called the Talmud and the Gemara. Just wanted to give a definition for that. There it talks about this thing of like during the time of plagues, the message is either to flee or to go inside. And there's a story which is brought by doctors in the commentaries. It's the story of and I guess it's Jewish doctors, which is that says that there was once a man that came to a town where their plague was going through, and he saw the angel of the plague, and he asked the angel of the plague, how many people are you taking? And he said 5,000. But by the end of the plague, there were 15,000 people that were taken. So he asked the angel of the plague, you said you were going to take 5,000. So the angel of the plague said, yes, as 5,000 was the plague, the other 10,000 was fear. And that's the parable, I guess it's a Jewish doctor's parable, that is brought in by the commentaries. So there's 2 ways to understand that wisdom, that they're contemplating through life itself. This wisdom is extracted out of just the experience of life. So first is that the actions that people take during this time of fear, that is as doubly detrimental than the thing itself. The second way to that this parable is talking about is that fear itself compromises the body. That not just the actions you take while you're in a state of fear, when you're acting out of fear, it's worse than the thing itself, but actually fear itself compromises your body. It makes you unhealthy, and it actually takes you out of this world. And that's why in the Torah, one of the most common phrases inside of the most narrow definition of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the most used phrase, virtually most used phrase, is "do not fear." Do not fear. Do not. It says it all the time. Do not fear. Do not fear. Do not fear. Do not fear. Just saying over and over, "Do not fear," because the fear itself, not only does your actions taken out of fear are something to be afraid of, but fear itself compromises your body and your soul. And you have a lot of teachings, especially in Chassidut, that emphasize that. So, for instance, the Baal Shem Tov, who's definitely one of the teachers in the Jewish people that was part of a return to a natural connection to nature and to wilderness and to the other beings around him. He was the child of parents that were very old, and he was orphaned at a very young age. And when his father was passing away, he said to him, "I know that I won't be now I see that I won't be able to teach you. I wanted to teach you my whole life, like to give you all this Torah and guidance. But now I see that I won't be able to do that because I'm old. So I'm going to have to compact it into one saying," which he said, "Fear nothing at all except for the Creator." And in that sense, the fear of the Creator that he's talking about is awe of all of life, awe and respect of creation. But don't fear anything. Don't act in fear. And you can see, and we're not going to be able to in this small session to talk about the Baal Shem Tov, but you can see in the stories and in his decisions in life, you can see he's always not acting out of fear. And his grandson, great-grandson, the Rabbi Nachman, is famous for saying that the main thing, the ikar, the whole point, is not to fear at all. That was he's like even stepping it up, is that being able to conquer fear and not act out of it and not have it inhabiting your life is the main spiritual teaching for Rabbi Nachman. He's also the one who emphasizes most this encounter with nature, this going into nature. And the connection between that two, emphasizing hitbodedut and encountering the Creator through creation, and being able to, that the main thing is not to be acting out of fear, but to be acting out of joy and love, these two come together, because an encounter with nature brings you to that. The first part of nature, when you have the fear of nature, and at that point, when someone is afraid of the natural world, they also don't understand the nature of fear. When you're an encounter with the natural world and encountering the Creator through it, forces you, it's incumbent upon you to get over that fear, to be able to connect. And so the idea that the main thing is not to fear at all, and you need to spend an hour in nature is like a pair. It comes together. And once you're able to get over the powerlessness that you might feel, that's first stage of hachna'ah, of I'm powerless here, and I'm very small, and from the grandeur of this world, just a deep breath, and to get over that, and now see of how I could sweeten it, and how I can act within it, and how I can do good within it, comes together. So the hitbodedut is definitely one of the main Jewish meditative practices. The other main Jewish meditative practice is a practice called hitbonenut, which is to be mitbonen, which is to bina, which is to contemplate, It's not talking about the seclusion and isolation of being out of nature, but to contemplate and to meditate on something. And because of our time, I'll just give a very brief description, but I'm hoping during these sessions we can unpack a lot of this information and let it open up. But Hitbonenut is to meditate onto something, to connect that to this transformation of fear. What happens, at least inside of me and inside of the teachings that descriptions of teachings that I heard, is when something happens in your life, all of a sudden, because of, for whatever reason, whether it's happened before, or you're traumatized by it, or it's just an anger or let's say a fear comes in, right? And at that exact moment when the fear is there, all it really is a tremendous amount of energy that surfaces up in you. And if you're not able to move it in the right direction, then it goes back in and turns into all sorts of, like we said before, like the 10,000, like it compromises your body, the anxiety and the fear, and makes you act in ways that you look back and say, what was that? Why would I even do that? But when it first comes up, it's actually a good thing, and it's just a ball of energy reacting to a situation that needs to be reacted to. So Hitbonenut is the process of meditating on a certain aspect of creation, and I'll give like an example. So one of the meditative practices of Hitbonenut is to visualize that you're in a state of ahava rabba, of great love, that the entire source of creation and anything of this existence whatsoever of this world is just a tremendous gift. We don't know why it's happening, but we're here and something's happening, and that is just a tremendous gift. It's just such a beautiful act of love that anything exists at all. And just sitting in that place before how it exists and what happens and the way life plans out, just the fact that life exists, sit in that room, that's the way it's described, sit in that room of this great love, and not for a little bit amount of time, but for a long time. Sit there in this place of, it's such a gift, and sit there and just sit in that place with nothing else and meditate on it. Just that simple idea. Then in times of your life when the energy comes up and now all of a sudden you're going to react in a way that you never wanted to, you can access that room, access that place quickly, and get back to that place of that this is yes, this particular thing is striking fear in me, but actually the entirety of this communication of this world is a gift, and it's a great love that it even exists at all. And if you can hit that room in that place, then that energy gets transformed, and you can use it for good, and you can use it as an act of love. And you can use it as to do good in that moment, and use that same energy that could have been destructive, you can use it for good. And so the Hasidic and mystical teachers will be emphasizing both of these methods. So finally, I would say that I wanted to give a quote from Shir Shirin that says, Mayim rabim lo yichlu chavos es ha'ahava, that many waters cannot quench the love, unaharas lo yish tefuha im yiten ish es kol hon beto ba'ahava boz yavu zulo. So many waters cannot quench the love, and no rivers can drown it. And then it says, if a man offered all of his wealth for love, it would be laughed at. So that phrase for mystics says that many waters cannot wash away the love, is this description of Hitbonenut, of this meditation, that despite the fact that there's many waves crashing against us, and there's a tumult, or we call it like a tohu, like a flood around, and things are moving, and it can bring fear and it can bring anxiety, those waves cannot quench the love. And that love is the Hava Rabbah, the great love, which is that this is just a gift. The whole thing is a gift. Yes, it's moving it's churning right now. But if I can get back to that place of this great love, then I can act accordingly in it. And that goes back to the thing of the Pirkei Avot, which is the most practical advice, which is the Tefillah and Torah and Gemilat Chasadim, or Torah, Tefillah, and Gemilat Chasadim, are what the world stands on, which is like the quintessential Jewish advice. And that is precisely connected to Hitbodedut and connected to what you get from connecting with the Creator through creation, which is Tefillah, prayer. And prayer is, in its most simple definition, the salient expression of emotion from a being to its source, to the source of its being, right? The emotion that comes rising up, that comes rising up from a being. So that is the bringing all your yearning, like in Hitbodedut. This is your yearnings. This is what I would want. This is what I yearn for. This is the who I want to be. This is the world I want to be in. And bringing those yearnings, those which are ideal, like the ideal, is yearnings for the ideal, is the first pillar. The second pillar is Torah. Torah is wisdom, which is getting guidance from, which is the middle stage, getting guidance from the creation and from what life is, to be able to know the path to walk, to get to the ideal that I'm looking for. And the third is Gemilat Chasadim, which is acts of kindness, acts of love, to act out of love. And in these times of many waters, right, Mayim Rabim, of a flood, these things, it says the world stands on them. So the way it's being described is a big flood, and you have three pillars that hold you there during a storm, during a flood, right? So you have stilts. These three things will hold you, and like pillars that hold up the world. In the literal description, it's literally saying that the mass of Earth is being held up in a huge sea of tohu, of chaos. It's actually literally imagining the world that way. But in a figurative way, and in life, those three things will hold you up. Meaning understanding what you're yearning for, who you want to be, and the life that is a deep yearning inside. And then the wisdom, which is Torah, the second one, which is to find the wisdom and guidance to grapple with that ideal and the real. And the Gemilat Chasadim, acts of kindness. And so in these times, these are it's time to go, when you hear the message that it's time to go inside is, what are those yearnings that are inside me? And inside, to receive guidance on my own, not to have someone else tell me what to do, but to understand what I need to do, which is Torah. And then to act with love and kindness, acts with your physical body of pouring love out to the things around you. And you get that through and love also means to step out there, extend yourself, not just to get out there, right? Love means not just like an internal expression, but to put it out there. You get that through an encounter with nature, right? You bring your yearnings and what you would like it to be. It shows you what it is. You hear what it's saying, and then you say, okay, how can I be part of this? What is the part of me that I can contribute that is good? And then you move forward with that. So I wanted to give each one of us a blessing that we should be able to find the honesty within ourselves to be able to say, what are we praying for? What is the yearnings of who we want to be and what we want the world to be? To find the wisdom and the guidance to be able to grapple with that ideal and the real, and to be able to start to act, especially now, with forgiveness and with acceptance and with love for all of the beings around us, to act out of love to each thing. And with that, that's like the three pillars that can hold up the world.